The title of the talk today is Finding God, and that seems like an interesting topic because of the perspective that we have in New Thought, which is that God is all there is. I'm actually going to read the description of the talk because that's the springboard that I'm starting from. So the basic premise of the New Thought teaching is that God is all there is, that everything is the divine presence taking particular form. So today we reconcile that core truth with the experience many of us have of searching for God. And I don't know if you have spent any time searching for God or wondering where God is. We just recorded and published episode number 200 of the Practical Prayer Podcast, and Carol and I talk about all of the differences between traditional religion and New Thought. And to me, it comes down to two key ideas that are different. Number one is, how could God let this happen? Because a lot of people who are involved in traditional religions say, how could God let this happen? And the other one is that when somebody does a prayer and the prayer is not answered, or they do not get the result of the prayer that they're looking for, the observation is God doesn't want me to have it. And in New Thought, we think a little differently about that. We know that God, that divine power and presence, is a law. God always says yes. That infinite creative law is always saying yes. It is creating according to consciousness. So the life we live is the life that we create. And what that says about God is that God is unconditional love. Well, I say that, and of course everybody agrees that God is unconditional love. But follow that through, and it shows you how you address those other two key issues about how would God let this happen and why doesn't God want me to have it. When you love someone regardless of what they're doing and the way that they're behaving and the attitudes that they have and the actions they take and the language they use and the way they treat other people. When you love somebody, it's okay with you. Whatever it is that they do, you love them the same amount. It's really, really tough for us to do that as humans. It is possible for the most delightful person to fall off the pedestal and have us finally say, I can't take any more of this abuse. So I'm out of here. And the love that I've felt, the love that I've expressed, is faltered. And that's conditional love. Unconditional love is where it doesn't matter. God always loves you. God is love unfolding, so everything is God's love. And that includes when things are going beautifully and joyously and delightfully during the good times. And it also applies during the bad times. We're going to spend some time talking about good and bad. In fact, there are some things that I think of as good. There are some things that I think of as bad. There are probably some similar things that you think of as good or bad, and we can also come up with our lists. So what I would love you to do is put into the chat 2 or 3 things that you think of as good, and 2 or 3 things that you think of as bad, and we will dive into that a little bit later in the talk. The brusque way to put it is that God doesn't care what we do. We do something that is wonderful and uplifting and joyous and helpful for all of humanity, and God loves us. And we do something deceitful and wretched and dishonest, the worst of the worst of the list of the bad stuff, and God still loves us. That's unconditional love. That's what happens in our relationship with the infinite. So when it comes to the life that we're living and the life that we're creating, it's all done according to belief. We are setting a conscious intention. Sometimes it's a subconscious intention, so we're setting an intention we don't know that we're setting, and that's what's creating the life that we're living. And that's the big stumbling block that a lot of people come to with this New Thought teaching, because when I'm able to create wonderful parking spaces and opportunities for prosperity and loving relationships and people calling out of the blue and life is a picnic and it's a happy day and it's a happy time, that's great. And I get to take some credit for that because I've learned this prayer process and I can bring something new into my experience. What happens when it starts to go sideways? What happens when it's something about illness or a tragedy or a real challenge or a financial reversal? What? We hear people say? You mean it's my fault? You're saying it's my fault, the life that I'm having? I'm to blame? Well, I wouldn't use those words. But if we are creating the life that we are living through our beliefs, and we're not liking the life that we're living, the way to change it is not to change something going on in our life. The way to change it is to change our beliefs, to change it in consciousness, to realign ourselves with the good that we're seeking. And by the way, trying to take credit for it is just an invitation to have to take blame for something that we don't like later on. The way that I prefer to think of it is authority, which is kind of like credit, and accountability, which is kind of like blame. We are able to create any experience that we want to have in life. We are creative entities in this active universe, and we're creating all the time. And the life that we're living is the accountability that we have for what we're creating. If we don't like what's going on in our life, we have to author something different. We get to put a new idea, a new consciousness, a new thought, a new intention into our lives, and then get to experience the difference there. That gets all kind of head-based and stuff, and I completely understand that. By the way, some of the bad stuff, selfishness, rudeness. Good stuff is kindness and respectfulness. Good is springtime, summer vacation, loving relationships. Bad is stress, dishonesty, violence. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to tell a parable. I was going to tell a story, but then I realized that when Jesus told stories, he called them parables, and they sound 10% more spiritual, so I'm going to tell a parable. And the parable is about driving to a friend's house. So it's pretty easy. I say, okay, you're going to go drive to a friend's house. So what do? You get in the car, you start the car, you drive, you park, and you get out. Pretty easy. Pretty simple. You know, there are a bunch of assumptions in there. There are a bunch of assumptions that we get to skip right over. The first assumption is that you have a car, or you have permission to use a car. Because if you try and drive to a friend's house in somebody else's car, that can be more trouble than you think it's going to be worth. So we have to have a car, and we have to, or permission to use a car. We have to have a key. If you were to go get into your next door neighbor's car and drive it over to your friend's house, it might work. They might be annoyed. There might be trouble with your neighbor. If you take the key to your car and you try and get into your neighbor's car, it's not going to work. And then you can say, why doesn't God want me to have this? We're not using the right key. We're not getting into the car that's appropriate for this particular situation. It's not about whether God wants us to get to our friend's house or not. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with us interacting with the world, with the universe, with the rest of this creative endeavor in a way that's going to bring us to the experience that we want to have. Once you get in the car and you get the key in the ignition and you start the car, do you know how to drive? Big assumption that you know how to drive, that you're going to just sit in the car, it's going to magically get you to your friend's house. No, there is some more accountability there. You're able to create that experience of getting to your friend's house, but you are accountable for knowing how to drive. And by the way, you're also accountable for knowing how to navigate. Do you know how to get to your friend's house? Because I have seen people drive around in circles forever and ever and ever, not being able to figure out where the heck they are. So navigation is a skill that's really important in getting to our desired destination, but it's so easy for us to skip over that. And if we're driving around in circles, trying to find our friend's house, how could God let this happen? How could God let this happen? God obviously doesn't want me to have this wonderful visit with my friend. And we get to take our accountability, our participation in creating the experience that we have, and put it on God. And why would anybody want to do that? Well, if you do that, then you don't have to be accountable. If stuff goes the way that you want it to, it's because God wanted you to have it. And if stuff doesn't, it's because God didn't want you to have it. And if there's something going on in your belief system, something going on in your consciousness that has you insisting on using the wrong key to get into the car, that takes your authority to be able to find the right key and get into the car and go on the rest of the trip out of your hands. And if we manage to get into our neighbor's car and take it, and we're actually guilty of grand theft auto, maybe there's some different accountability that's going on there. Or maybe we just scored ourselves a $45,000 car. Don't know. We don't know. Do you know how to park? If there's a parallel parking space in front of your friend's house, do you know how to get the car into that? Or are you going to cause some damage as you're trying to do that? How could God let this happen? I have an experience. We have a neighbor across the street. Our driveways are almost lined up, but not quite. And I found, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago at this point, I had been leaving my car parked on the street in front of my house, and the back left quarter panel was damaged. The taillight was broken out and something was going on. I had no idea why. So I contacted the insurance company, and I went and I got the repairs done. I paid the deductible myself. And I didn't know where it had happened. And then I was sitting working from home in my office, and my car was parked in the same spot, and the neighbor across the street backed her car out and was very carefully, hesitantly trying to make it around the corner. We live on a cul-de-sac, so they always drive out in that direction. And rather than back into my driveway, which is almost directly across from hers, or go so she's pointing down the other way and has to turn around, she was trying to get the front of the car pointed out of the dead-end street. And she backed into my car and did exactly the same damage again. Only this time I knew what had happened. So I contacted her and got the car repaired again and learned, don't park my car there. How could God let this happen? How could God let this happen? I was just minding my own business, parking my car at the end of in front of my house, and just got damaged twice out of nowhere. How could God let this happen? Well, that's the situation that we're in. And oh, by the way, Dina's car was parked in the same spot, and she backed into Dina's car too. So we're 3 for 2 in cars in our house. And then we learned something. Don't park the car there, because she might come backing out of her driveway. And we've had conversations with her, but sometimes she gets flustered and she just tries to do it again. I said, back into my driveway. You're welcome to do that anytime you want, and you can make the turn and go out the street. And there's somebody else who lives a block or two over who sometimes likes to stash her car on our street because there's not enough room on her street. So it's more convenient to her. And it's like, well, you're not really part of the neighborhood, but I understand what you're doing. So there's a little bit of like, we're crowding up our street and stuff. And once she left her car parked in exactly that spot and was rewarded with a crease along the side of her car. Same process again. How could God let this happen? This is just a thing. This is somebody who knows how to drive the way that she knows how to drive, and people who know how to park the way that we know how to park. And we are not being punished. We are simply living and experiencing our lives. God doesn't care. Back the cars into each other, get a new taillight, fine. Support the auto body shop again and again and again, fine. Or do something different. God doesn't want me to have this. God doesn't care whether you have this. Do you want you to have this? Do you believe that you deserve to have this? If you do, then the good is available to you. Louise Hay, in the work that she did with healing people, said that uniformly the one thing everybody has in common is that they don't believe that they deserve their good. That's what we all got going on. We don't believe that we deserve our good. So maybe that's the thing that we want to be focused on. Instead of saying, God doesn't want me to have this, or how could God let this happen? It's like, I am participating in this creative endeavor, and I deserve all the good. I deserve all of what I describe as good. So we started talking about what's good and bad. And I came up with my own list. So good, puppies. Puppies are good. Loving encounters are good. Relaxation is good. That was what was on my list. And just because I've been involved a lot with artificial intelligence lately, I asked ChatGPT to list 10 things that are good. And ChatGPT has access to all of the knowledge of humanity and can come up with the most common answers to that. Now, I don't think that ChatGPT's answers are necessarily the right ones or the best ones, but they give us some insight. And here they are. I'm just going to lift them, and I'm not going to give the explanation of why. Kindness, clean water, laughter, education, friendship, nature, music, congratulations, Benjamin, honesty, generosity, and love. It's almost like a countdown as far as I'm concerned. I also have access to the Emma Curtis Hopkins library. Basically, somebody compiled it into an AI engine. So I said, what does Emma Curtis Hopkins say is good? And she says to believe in goodness is to believe in badness. The terribly good will wonder why the terribly bad have the goods of the world. The terribly good is in ignorance that the terribly bad do not believe in their own badness as intolerably as the good believes in it. Good is the light within us, symbolized by the sun, but more profound as the principle of righteousness. Good contains no mixture of evil or failure and is pure life, substance, and intelligence. Good, she says, is satisfaction, health, judgment, and prosperity. Judgment, interesting. Dig into what she means by that. The word good has a revealing power greater than God and is the starting point for spiritual understanding. And then she gets flowery. Our good governs us and is the divine elixir that breathes through the universe. It is as easy for us to have that as to have anything else. My list of bad stuff started with Nazis. And then went through starvation, cruelty, and failure. And ChatGPT said violence, lying, pollution, greed, hatred, corruption, poverty, discrimination, addiction, and neglect. And what's God's opinion about those things? That they're things. There is no value judgment on those things. It is possible for us to have an experience on one column or the other column. And God is perfectly okay supporting us, whatever it is that we choose. And we get to choose for ourselves. And since this is an infinitely creative universe, if I have the consciousness of what I describe and consider as good, that's what I'm going to be attracting into my experience. That's the difference between good and bad. It's the difference between preferable and undesirable. And when we focus on the preferable, we put an emphasis on that. We attract that more into our lives. That's the reason that we want to focus on the good, on the God, on the creative, on the potential, on the possibility. When we are finding God, God is not that law that's always saying yes. God is that infinite love that is sharing itself to bring more and more and more richness into life. So instead of swiping somebody else's car and smashing it into somebody else's car while you're trying to park because you don't know how, do the part that's yours to do. Take the steps that are yours to invite more and more and more of what you define and explain and express as good into your life. Because you know what? You deserve it. Regardless of what Louise Hay says, we all believe, you deserve it. You deserve all of the good. So open to it, invite it, allow it, and then report back on the good that's unfolding in your life. So it is.